I want to start straight by asking you about the escalation in the Strait of Hormuz. We saw how Iranian authorities fired upon two Indian flagged ships, and we also saw US uh, interception of Iranian flagged cargo ship. The current scenario is being called blockade of a blockade. How damaging is this, and what impact it will have on the diplomatic talks, sir?
Well, it's very interesting. Iran has been trying for years to develop weapons grade materials, and the outside world has tried to stop them, and it's subjected them to a lot of sanctions and such. One thing that Iran has discovered in the last month or two is they don't really need nuclear weapons as a deterrent force to keep someone from attacking them or attempting to change the regime. Their control of the Straits of Hormuz is their super weapon. Okay, they can cut off 20% of the world's energy supply. And as you know, for countries like India, it's even higher than 20%. So, hence the blockade. The blockade of the blockade is caused by the United States feeling that suffering under all these economic sanctions, Iran desperately depends on exporting oil and importing certain key goods. So, if we can keep them from getting those, they'll come to the peace table. So both sides are using the waterway as an advantage over each other. And as you say, in the last few days, we've seen some important incidents involving Indian vessels and a U.S. Navy vessel. I think that this will go on for a while. I don't think this is going to be a neat, clean ceasefire agreement where everybody stops shooting and then there's talks and then somebody signs a piece of paper. It'll be two steps forward and one step back. Things like this will happen, then there'll be a little progress. Things like this will happen, then there'll be a little more progress.
So this escalation in the Strait of Hormuz is happening at the time when White House has just confirmed that JD Vance will lead the delegation for the second round of talks in Islamabad. However, Iranians are saying that we have no plans to send a delegation. Given the current circumstances, do you think Iran will return to table after we have seen the threats made by Trump? He has said that take a deal, what we are giving you, or you'll be destroyed. Do you think Iran, what they are saying, they will come back to table and will have a discussion, diplomatic discussion, sir?
I think they will come back to the table. Now, I could be wrong. I don't think the Pakistanis would encourage the U.S. delegation led by the vice president to come all that way if they didn't have a reason to think the Iranians were coming. And I think the Iranians would be well served to not just abandon the vice president of the United States in the middle of Pakistan, but to show up even if there's no real results from it. So that's one thing I'm looking for. So they actually send anyone. And second, does something at least small come out of this round of talks, an agreement on one of the side issues, or maybe an agreed upon framework for future talks and where the ceasefire process would go. If the Iranians go to Islamabad and if something small comes out of it as a kind of a gesture of good faith on both sides, we'll be making some progress. If they don't go to Islamabad, it's going to be a problem.
Sir, how do you see the overall approach taken by Iran? Their defiance is telling. We are reading about opinion pieces from all over the world about their defiance and how it is being appreciated. Do you think Trump administration undermined or underestimated Iran's capability and resilience, sir?
What the Trump administration did, and it's largely because a lot of the key cabinet players are amateurs, they underestimated the ability of Iran to adjust. This is a common mistake in war. The first thing the Iranians did was say, regime change. Okay, we know that you want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to establish a depth chart about 4 people deep for each one of our key roles. So you can kill guy number 1, you can kill guy number 2. We've still got somebody experienced who's ready to step in the role. Okay, that was a very good move on their part. The second thing they did was to realize fairly early on that they're just firing missiles at countries around them wasn't doing that much good, but closing the straits was what they needed to do. And it's pretty easy to do. They're pretty shallow waters. Drones and little boats you don't need a real navy. You don't really need missiles that are accurate. You just need drones and these little boats with torpedoes on them. So they discovered that now. And I don't think that the Trump administration saw either one of those things coming. So what were the real goals here? Goal number one was regime change. That's not going to happen unless the U.S. is willing to land tens of thousands of troops, which I don't think we are. Second was get the Iranians to give up, slow down their nuclear weapons program. I think that may happen, but only because the Iranians have discovered they really don't need it. So they can trade that off for something really big, like economic sanctions being lifted. And then the third goal that the U.S. shared with Israel was to weaken Iran's ability to attack Israel through Hezbollah, through Hamas, and to attack world shipping in the Red Sea through the Houthis. The Israelis had pretty well achieved that with both Hezbollah and Hamas before this started. The world's going to have to figure out what to do about the Houthis at some point. They have been fairly quiet during all this. So, is Trump going to get his regime change? No. Is he going to get the nuclear weapons progress? Yeah, maybe. Is he going to get cutting back on their ability to aid Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis? Yeah, maybe. Okay. Now, what the Iranians really want at this point, they want those sanctions lifted. They want that really bad. And they may achieve that.
So, what do you think about the rhetoric from both the sides? The hope for peace, and we are hearing statement that there might be a deal, there might be a framework, is interrupted by these escalation in Strait of Hormuz and posturing by Iran and US. What do you make of this entire thing, sir?
Well, first off, this is Trump's negotiating style. If you go back and look at the way he did business before he ever became president of the United States, this is how he operates. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sign an agreement, then have it not be the final agreement, just the basis for the future. But guess who else does business that way? The Iranians. So it's 2 very similar styles, really. And that's why I think this won't be a clean ceasefire process. I think it'll be always a little ragged around the edges. There'll be a little progress, and then the U.S. or Israel or Iran will decide it has to attack something for some reason or another. Then there'll be a little more progress. We got this classic situation now where Iran says, well, listen, lift the blockade of the blockade, and then we'll do final ceasefire with you. Whereas the U.S. says, well, no, you do the final ceasefire, then we'll lift the blockade of the blockade. This is classic in ceasefire and peace talks. This happens all the time. So the professional diplomats who are involved in this, including those from Pakistan, will adjust to this. It'll look a little ragged. Probably every so often it'll look like the process is going to fall apart. But, if you look back over the last week or two, the assault on the Indian boat was regrettable. The Iranians probably don't like what we did yesterday with our Navy, but they're 2 relatively small incidents. This is not the all-out war that we had 2 weeks ago.
Then my next question would be simple yet not simple. I want to understand from you, how long is it going to take for a long-lasting peace? I want to highlight this point that the demands that both sides are putting are maximalist. Trump is saying that we want enriched uranium out of Iran. Iran wants lifting of sanctions, money for damages, and recognition of its position in Strait of Hormuz. How long it is going to take for both the sides to have a deal, to have a long-lasting peace, sir?
At a minimum, weeks. I would say weeks to have like a real ceasefire deal. Now, if you're talking a long-term comprehensive solution, where at the end of the day, Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons capability, they're out from under most of their sanctions and can start making money again. In some way, at least symbolically, there's some restrictions on their abilities to aid Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. And basically, a lot of the major issues are taken care of except for regime change. I'd say months, maybe a year.
And so, what about the Lebanon now? What is the future of Lebanon from here? So, we are seeing there's a ceasefire, but is it going to last long? What will Iranians do if Israel again goes into Lebanon, South Lebanon? What do you think is the future of Lebanon from here, sir?
I think, if you look back at the past of Lebanon before about the 1970s, Lebanon was a peaceful, democratic, multi-ethnic, multi-religion place. And unfortunately, that fell apart because of all the armed groups operating there. One thing I think people in Washington don't understand, as well as the Israelis and people in the region do, is Hezbollah is important to Iran for two reasons. The first is the ability to attack Israel from the north from time to time. But the second is that there's a very old Shia community in Lebanon. It's been there since the 9th century. And unfortunately, in today's Lebanon, all the various groups, Christian, Druze, Muslim, Shia Muslim, feel like they have to have an armed militia to protect themselves. Okay. And that's really important to the Iranians. You know, maybe some way can be found that Hezbollah exists and is strong enough to protect the Shia population there, but is no longer able to launch offensive attacks into Israel. We might be there right now. Israel has attacked them so relentlessly over the last couple of years that their ability to attack Israel is pretty low.
Sir, my last question would be about the UN. What is the future of UN from here? Is it failing? Is it a failure according to you? Or is there a scope for its improvement from here, sir?
I wouldn't say it's a failure. I think what has failed is the unwillingness of the big and medium-sized powers to utilize the UN properly. Okay, now for instance, you need somebody to step forward and broker peace talks. In Gaza, that was Qatar. With the Iran war, it's been Pakistan. Why? Because this is one region of the world where the United States and Russia and China cannot step in and impose a peace. We're party to both of certainly to the Iran dispute and allies with Israel, who's party to the Gaza dispute. So we're not acceptable as a mediator. Neither are most of the European countries for historical reasons. The UN could have played a role here. You know, in an era, and we've had them before, where the UN member states are very supportive of the Secretary General, and the Secretary General is a strong actor. The Secretary General's office could be stepping in here and playing the role that Pakistan's playing. And we probably need to get back to that at some point. There's also, I haven't heard anybody actually propose this, but at least theoretically, there could be a role for peacekeepers here. And that's the UN. So that could be a role that they might play in the future. There's also going to have to be people taking care of refugees and internally displaced people during all this. There's a lot of internally displaced people in Lebanon. That's the UN system that does that better than anyone else. So I think the member states should really be thinking, you know, how can we utilize the UN here? And we also really just, you know, we've been fortunate that countries have stepped up and have been fairly effective at mediating these disputes. But one of these days, we're going to have one where there is no logical good party to do it. And that's where the UN should be strong.
Thank you so much, sir, for speaking with us and giving